things went downhill in the 80s because of the AIDS panic. It was the promotion of fear, the idea of a gay plague, and this wasn't helped by gay rights activists who, along with the government, tried to counter the idea of it being a gay plague by saying, oh, everyone is at risk. And it wasn't true. You know, it was a lie, but that sowed further fear. So rather than standing up for gay rights in the face of an infection that affected only high-risk groups, you know, it was hard to get, you can all get it, as though that will mean nobody's going to be anti-gay. Well, it doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, it was activists in collaboration with the government who put out the famous Tombstone advert with John Hurt's voice, which, you know, was this fear and horror of this pandemic that's going to kill us all.
But it's spreading. So protect yourself. And read this leaflet when it arrives. If you ignore AIDS, it could be the death of you.
Even swimming pools were closed. It was that mad. Pensioners were examining their sexual history, even though they might be in their 80s. And this leaflet went through absolutely everybody's letterbox, promoting this "Don't die of ignorance" message that we could all die. Millions were spent on the publicity campaign, and it set back the cause of lesbian and gay rights. Don Milligan and Dr. Michael Fitzpatrick wrote a really good pamphlet at the time called The Truth About the AIDS Panic, you know, and it said HIV is hard to get, not everyone is going to die. So it told the truth, and it championed lesbian and gay rights. The pamphlet was written off as some sort of homophobic treatise, because if you didn't go along with the sort of prevailing line, you must be some anti-gay moron, which was obviously ridiculous.
Children who need to be taught to respect traditional moral values are being taught that they have an inalienable right to be gay.
And what was Section 28 about?
Section 28 was a clause of a local government bill introduced by the government in 1988, which made it a criminal offence to positively promote homosexuality in schools. And a lot of teachers were very fearful as a result. There was a real worry that lots of books would be banned. And there were a lot of people who, you know, took up the campaign against it. Thousands attended marches. Lots of straight people were very sympathetic to the cause of equal rights, you know, and were on the side of overthrowing this reactionary piece of legislation.
And what kind of solidarity action did you take part in?
That's a good question, actually. What's interesting, firstly, is that the term solidarity was much more common parlance. And if you were a political activist, it would be something that you promoted. You know, you would go out and argue with people to win them to taking sides with a particular cause or a fight or a campaign. And you'd be arguing that they should act in solidarity. It did mean that you had to stick your neck out a bit. It was taking sides. Taking solidarity action in support of your fellow man on any number of issues would be very normal. I think at the time, things that I did, I wouldn't have thought of as solidarity. Not particularly because I was living with a woman and people would have thought, oh, you know, she's doing that because she's a lesbian. It's what seemed to be right. And for me, it was about equal rights. It wasn't about what I was personally doing in my private life. I did stand in the general election, but that was in 1987. That was on a lesbian and gay rights platform. And that was really around challenging the AIDS hysteria, and got into all sorts of trouble for that and rows. But it was a, you know, a good thing to do, even though I only got a few hundred votes. It was still worth doing. In fact, in Sheffield, supposedly this very radical place, David Blunkett, who was running things at the time, council leader, had a us and our stall campaigning for lesbian and gay rights removed. When this Section 28 was going through the House of Commons, I did some research and I found these new slides for sex education in schools, and they were hilarious. I mean, they were mad. And so every image that showed a penis, you know, if it was a kind of biology lesson, which was where sex education, quite rightly, used to be taught, there'd be a slide of a penis, often covered in some nasty sores, because it would be explaining what gonorrhea is or some STD. But in the bottom of the image was a hand with a ring on it. So that even talking about STDs, you had to show it in the context of love and marriage, or you could be inadvertently promoting homosexuality. It was completely insane. Anyway, I was living in Leeds at the time, and we were into doing sort of political street theatre and challenging this rubbish. And so in the middle of Dortmund Square in Leeds, I'd got a big flip chart and was telling an assembled crowd about Section 28 and why it was backward. And I'd drawn a great big penis, quite badly, just, you know, like that, and a hand with a ring on it. And people were really interested to find out. People didn't know what this implication of this moral grandstanding by the Conservatives really was, and how bigoted it was. And I was very quickly dragged off by each arm, you know, like this, by the police, and threatened with prosecution under some obscenity law. The charges were fortunately dropped. And so, yeah, that's the kind of things that I got up to.
I've been involved in a whole lot of different types of campaigns over many, many years, and it's quite interesting for me anyway to look back and think about how some of those things have changed. Thinking way back to the mid-1980s when I was a lot younger, one of the things that had a big effect on me was something that probably people wouldn't have heard of, which was something called the One 12 campaign, which was a group of gay men who were arrested for the heinous crime of objecting to a counsellor who said they should have been gassed. Really, really awful homophobic statement. And these gay men were arrested and held, I think, for over a week. We protested against that. I think it was really, really important for straight men and everybody basically to support people like the One 12. It may not have been directly my issue, but it was a question of people's rights. And I think that rights should, you know, are universal. The rights that they were denied are rights that I expect. And if I allow their rights to be diminished, I think it also makes it far more difficult for me to defend my rights or others' rights in other contexts as well.
It was great to talk to Don Milligan and to learn from him what solidarity there was back in the 70s and the early days of the fight for gay liberation.
The British Gay Liberation Front was founded in the London School of Economics in 1970, and I came out in 1971. And the reason for that was that I'd been to the Kill the Bill demonstration, which was against the Industrial Relations Act, and I saw a whole contingent of gay liberation people all slapped up to the eyeballs and being rousted about and attacked by building workers and other trade unionists on the demonstration. And I couldn't go near them. I was frightened of them, really. But they were handing out 2 leaflets, one of which was an attack on psychiatry, and the other one was explaining what trade unions they'd been in. And I thought that was rather improbable from the look of them. But I went back to Lancaster and cancelled the arrangements I'd made to go and see a psychiatrist. But this leaflet saved me from the psychiatrist. And we were in the Socialist Society at Lancaster University. And the amazing thing was that a fair number of people in the Socialist Society, particularly the men, were gay men, and we didn't know this about each other at all. Initially, we didn't want to do anything as radical as call ourselves the Liberation Front. We thought that was a bit extreme. But this rather annoying lesbian came up from London, and she was sitting in this meeting in somebody's kitchen, and she started banging on the table, saying that we've got to say that we're proud and we're angry, and whereupon the chair collapsed, which was great fun for all of us, because we were really annoyed by this woman. But in fact, of course, she was entirely right. I suppose about a week after that, we decided to call ourselves the Liberation Front, and caused lots of mayhem after. When I came out, I was the organiser of the International Socialists, which was the forerunner of the Socialist Workers' Party. The comrades then, when I came out, said it would be all right if I came out as long as I took a back seat. And then another comrade, a male comrade, said to me, "I don't know why you don't throw yourself in the river." So there was all that side to it. But on the other hand, there were positive responses from straight people about the place. And that has a long history. In the late 19th century, 1897, I think, Havelock Ellis was a psychoanalyst who was the first person to publish works on homosexuality in English, who was a straight man, did lots of work with other people to develop the case and a new understanding of homosexuality, which you and I would regard as completely bizarre now, but nevertheless it was progressive at the time, what they were doing and saying. The whole question of the way in which people related to all that was completely uneven. The International Socialists at the time were completely hostile, really. They're anti-gay. And I was at a conference in St Pancras Town Hall, which is now the Camden Centre, I think. And I was speaking to the conference, 1,000 people at the conference. I had to get some straight people to hand out leaflets for me, giving my details to found a gay group within the International Socialists. And they came back to me. They were all as white as sheets. Well, everybody thought they were queer, but basically. That was interesting. But, they were all straight people and they were helping me. So it's uneven. One of the things that most annoyed the International Socialists was I arranged lots of meetings with male trade unionists, with shop stewards and so on, up and down the country that went very, very well. There I was in my Afghan coat with hair down the back of my shirt and a shoulder bag and earrings in both ears. And this completely horrified the leadership. But I got on fine with the workers. If you're straight and you're supporting the gay movement, then you're doing it because you know that you're going to get something out of it. It's not a charitable act. You know that if gays get equal rights, then your life will in some way be reconfigured, will become better. I remember working in a place that was where the employers were all observant Muslims, and this guy was trying to say that I shouldn't work there because a fellow workmate, I shouldn't work there because I was homosexual. And I just, and the management called me in for a meeting with this anti-gay guy and wanted us to have a conversation with each other. And I refused. I said, I'm not having a discussion with him or with anyone about this. So I said, I don't care what he thinks, right? Right. I mean, you can sack me or do what you like, but actually I'm not going to apologise for who I am or what I'm doing, and he's got no right. It's not a mutual exchange here. We're not misunderstanding each other. He doesn't like the fact that I'm homosexual. Well, that's his problem, right? I mean, and that's the way in which you should deal with problems in the workplace. I published a pamphlet called The Politics of Homosexuality, but that only saw the light of day because Sheila Rowbottom, a straight woman feminist, paid for it, and one or two other intellectuals from around the International Socialists helped me, which the organisation refused to advertise or publicise in the newspaper. And there were these evil characters at this branch meeting where they had a little trial of me in a kitchen, where they explained to me that I had to stop doing gay work because it was not in the interests of the party. So I had to part company with that organisation at that time. They were anti-gay, really. I mean, and there are still people that are anti-gay, but you can hear left-wing people talking, and you would think that it was the left that brought about gay liberation. And I assure you that is absolutely not the case. They were always running behind, because, of course, the modern struggle to improve the situation of gay people was brought about by the Moral Welfare Council of the Church of England in 1953, who actually got the whole debate going, and led to the Wolfenden Committee that reported in 1957, and then 10 years later in 1967, they did the partial decriminalisation, which legalised what nobody ever got caught for, which was adult men in private over 21. In private didn't mean a hotel room, it meant private. In fact, prosecutions increased after they passed that law, but nevertheless it was an opening up of the whole debate. But that was brought about by the Church of England. The most important thing, and this is causes some dispute because of the confusions of identity politics nowadays, but the whole question was equality. The whole question is we wanted equal rights. We wanted to have the same rights as everybody else in society. And that was the case that was made. The whole way in which people talk about these things now is entirely different. When they talk about identity politics, they're talking about themselves, they're talking about individuals in the world, whereas we were talking in collectivities. We were talking about the way whole groups of people were treated in society. Modern identity politics is about subjective feelings. The projection of that into some kind of social position, apparently political position, is nonsense, because you just have to agree with it. If you say this is how I feel, I say, oh really, okay, but that's how you feel. There's nothing you can do about that, because it doesn't connect you with other people. If you think of the so-called swinging 60s, which really run from about 1965 to 1975. If you think of that, the lightning bolt across David Bowie's face, if you think of a whole range of popular media in terms of music and music presentations. I mean, even Mick Jagger made a brilliant film called Performance, where he's in one frame he's a woman and in another frame he's a man. And striking things were going on, as well as the painter, David Hockney. Lots of people in GLF think that they did it all, right? That because we were running around in frocks and causing trouble, that somehow we were doing it all. But that's not quite true. I mean, what we did was important in terms of getting the discussion going and moving the whole thing on. But nevertheless, it was in the water, so to speak. It was in the way in which society was changing. Once the marriage thing went through, then we had equal rights right across the board. And I think this has led to real confusion in the minds of people like Stonewall and all the rest of it, which is one of the reasons why they've opted to go down the trans route. They didn't have anything else to do. That's why I think the gay movement should have directed its main thrust towards international work. If you struggle for equality and you get it, well, then you've got it. And you've got adoption of children, you've got the settling down into monogamous relationships and coupledom and all the rest of it, and the difficulty of integration in the society is reconfigured by equality, which people didn't really anticipate. People never get what they fought for; they always get something else. You know, because of course, you know, people didn't want regular family life and didn't want to gay relationships to become straight ones. But that's what they've become, right? So the radical rhetoric of the early 70s has become something, has just vanished in the mists of time as people have settled down, got married, and et cetera, et cetera.